So in the previous video we saw how to do an activity that had two fragments side by side, and this is the XML of that activity, which we call activity master. The layout was horizontal, so things would be side by side horizontally. We had one fragment with a button and then one fragment with a text field that was updating with with a timestamp. Now the idea is that if we switch layouts, say for example to a portrait layout, we would have instead of having we would have fragments side by side. But if we go back, if we switch to landscape mode, we would have two fragments side by side. But if we switch to portrait, okay, we want just one fragment to show up here, and then when we push the button, so for example, let me go to the design here. It would be interesting to have, instead of fragment, to just have one big fragment here in the screen, and then when we tap the button, the next fragment shows up and covers the previous one. Okay, the next activity shows up. So when you're in portrait mode, is one screen after the other. But when you're in landscape mode, which is this guy is tilted, then you can have fragments side by side because you have more real estate to the sides. So we're going to do that. The first step to doing this is to know a little thing about Android. Android will try to look for example, here my master activity, which is the main activity that loads both fragments. My main activity is looking for r.layout.activityMaster. Now, if it is in portrait mode, it will automatically try to look stuff in a special folder, which we don't have. If it doesn't find ActivityMaster in that special folder, then it's going to go down, look into layout. We're going to make use of that special folder to put an ActivityMaster in that special folder. So if it's in portrait mode, it's going to look for the ActivityMaster in the special folder. If it's in landscape mode, it's going to look for the ActivityMaster in just the plain layout folder. So I'm going to create a new directory here called layout-port. Layout port is the default directory where all portrait layouts are looked for. If they're not found here, then Android will go and look at them in the layout. Okay? And in the layout port, I'm going to create an activity master XML that only contains one fragment, the fragment where the button is. So I'm going to use new layout resource file. I'm going to call it the same thing, activity_master. It's going to be a linear layout. Good. You can see here now that I have this activitymaster.xml. I'm going to go to the text, and in here I'm just going to put the button part of the fragment. Just for easiness, I'm going to go to this activity master, the one under layout, and just copy the first fragment because that's exactly all I need. I'm copying that and putting it in this activity master. Okay, so that's going to be my my master. Okay, I could do this. I'm not going to have this width. Actually, for the width, I'm going to match parent, just because it's the only thing there. Layout width, match parent. Okay. All right. So I have my layout here with my little button. It's only one, and it's under Activity Master. Remember, the fragment, the class for the fragment is the same. It's the same fragment. Okay, it's the same fragment class, which is going to look for this fragment master XML when it has to render. So I don't change anything, just the main layout of the activity. Okay, now that's one activity that I'm going to have. It's going to load up, the master activity is just going to load up one fragment here. But when I tap on update, right? When I tap on update, a new activity has to open with the other frame, with the second fragment, not frame. Okay, so I'm going to create the layout for that fragment. Import, also just to group all the portrait layout resource files together, and I'm going to call this activity detail, just because I'm calling it fragment detail as well. And in the activity detail, I'm going to have the second fragment. Again, I'm going to copy it from this activity master, which contained both fragments previously. Now I'm creating two activity layouts. one containing each fragment. So in the activity detail, I'm going to paste the second fragment. Okay? So it's going to be match parent. All right. So now I have set up two layouts, one with one fragment each. Now what I need to do is, well, to start calling them. The detail fragment activity here, okay, the master activity is going to already load this activity master fragment. It's already doing it. If I go here where it says R layout activity master, if it's in portrait mode, it is going to load this activity master. Okay, it is going to load that. What I need is another activity that's able to load the detail fragment, the activity detail layout with the detail fragment in it. Okay. So in order to do that, I'll need to create this activity class. Okay. And to do that, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say, in this main package, I'm just going to do all in one package. I'm going to say new. What happens is it's going to ask a bunch of things here about what's the layout for the activity. It's going to be a blank activity. Next. It's going to have the layout name is going to be activity detail, and I'm going to call it detail activity up here. That's fine. Title, let's say detail here. Okay, and no fragment here. All right. Oh, I need to specify a fragment. Fine. You can do this all by hand too. Fragment detail. All right. You know what? I'm not going to do it this way because it's not letting me do what I want. No, I'll just put. I'm just going to have a placeholder fragment. That's fine. Now, what's the problem here? Layout name must be unique. Okay, so this is not going to let me do that. Cancel. Right-click new, create just a Java class, and I'm going to call it detail activity. Okay. Again, it's important that it's a Java class because I could create an activity for the first time without any of these things in there, and that would be fine to go through the wizard. But apparently, at least in IntelliJ or Android Studio, it has a problem with stuff that I've already created. Anyway, so detail activity will extend activity, and it'll extend. I control space there to just get help for the class. It extends activity. Perfect. As you know by now, the imports are added automatically as I use them. And I will have a public static. I'm going to create a little string. Oh, we're gonna do that later. So what I'm going to do now is to override a protected void, and then the method is the onCreate, right? So onCreate, which takes a bundle saved instance state that you can find. Actually, there's a way in which you can right-click here and create all these for yourself, but I'm just going to do them manually. You call the superclass onCreate with the saved instance. Whoops. Saved instance state. Now we'll need to check whether the activity has been switched to landscape mode. If yes, then finish and go to the start activity. If no, then load the detail activity. Okay? So if get resources dot get configuration dot orientation. This is how you check for the orientation. If the orientation of the app is the constant orientation landscape, so if if my app is in landscape, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to say finish and return. Okay? If not, I can do else, or I can just, because there's a return, I don't really need to do an else, but finish. There you go. Else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the content view to a layout. It's going to be our layout dot and then the detail, activity detail, right? So I'm creating another activity here that if the configuration is portrait, okay, what it's going to happen is it's going to set the content to activity detail, okay? And I'm going to pass some stuff to it. So bundle extras equals get, I'm going to receive actually stuff. Get intent, get extras, and then what happens is that you remember how between the two activities, between the two fragments, I'm passing the milliseconds, right? I'm updating the milliseconds. When you're talking about two different activities, you need to pass them via something called the intent. Okay, and we're assuming that an intent object is arriving to this class. Okay, just for now, just get it. There's an intent object that has information for the detail activity Java. The way to get the information from the detail activity Java is with the getIntent.getExtras method that gets you a bundle called extras, and from then you can actually get values stored in that extras in that bundle. And the way to do it is this: if the extras are not null, that means there's something in there. Okay, I'm going to create a string s equals extras dot get string, and then in here I will say get string timestamp. Okay, because what I'm going to pass is the times in milliseconds. So this activity will talk to its fragment and we'll put the milliseconds where they should be. How does it talk to its fragment? Well, I'll create a text view TV, which is going to be a link to, whoops, I need to import this guy, a text view called TV, which is actually the details.text, right? So it's going to be find view by ID, r.id dot details text. I don't need that. Okay. All right. And it will set the text of that view, of the tv.setText to the string s, basically the millisecond. So somehow I am going to pass a bundle from my master activity. This is all if it's in portrait mode. If it's in portrait mode, when I click on update in the master activity, I'm going to pass some data to the detail activity in through something called an intent. I will get that data, I will put it in extras. That data is always a bundle. I will put it in extras. And in the extras, I will extract some data there. When I pass the timestamp, I'm going to call it timestamp. It's going to be a key value pair thing, where the key is timestamp and the value will be whatever timestamp I pass. This is how I extract that timestamp into a string, and then I will put it into the text view of my fragment, of the detailed fragment. Because the detail activity class uses the activity detail layout, and that in turn has the fragment that in turn has the details text element. When I update this text, the fragment will also be updated. Okay? I know that's a lot to digest, but let's bear with me for a second. Main thing here is that if the configuration is landscape, do nothing and return. If the configuration is not landscape, meaning it's portrait, I assume somebody passed me some information. From that information, I'm going to extract the timestamp portion of that information, and I'm going to update the text view with that timestamp, the text view from that fragment, from the fragment of this activity. Okay? Now, in the master activity, we need to adjust it a little bit. So I'm going to go to my master activity. Why is there an error here? Let's see, what's the error? I don't see an error there. Okay. Okay, it's gone. So in the it's not gone. Okay, in the master activity, I have to update some things. Here, we had it so that if the button was clicked, okay, the detail fragment was going to be updated with the text. What needs to happen now is on top of this is the detail fragment will not be updated with the text anymore. What's going to happen is I'm going to send an intent. I'm going to pack the information in one of these bundles and send it via an intent to the detail activity, which we know already catches it in the method. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to change a few things. So we are going to instantiate the detail fragment just like we did before. Okay. And we're going to set the text also in there. Okay. However, if this cannot be done, why would this fail? Well, this fails if the detail fragment is not in the layout. And in portrait mode, remember, we're using the activity master from this folder, port here, which only contains the master fragment. So effectively in this activity, which is the master activity, the detail fragment is not going to be in layout, so it's going to go to this else. Okay? The whole on click, when you click on the button, it's going to go to this else. And in this else, I'll create an intent called I. I need to import this guy. Intent called I. It's going to be a new intent, and for this app, so get application context, that's fine. This is how you create new intents within your application. And it's going to have the detail activity class. By the way, this is the way you pass class definitions or class instances in a method, okay, that requires just pure instances. But this is basically how you create an intent from this activity to some other activity, okay? So you're basically targeting this activity here. Now, we're going to put information in this intent, I.putExtra, that's what I'm going to call it, and I'm going to set timestamp because that's the name of the variable that the detail activity is expecting. And I'm going to put the text, right? The text that I'm passing here, the timestamp basically that I was updating with. Now I'm not updating the component directly, I'm just passing it via the intent. And once you do that, you have to say, you know, I'm going to start an activity. I'm going to start activity. I'm going to start an activity with that intent. Basically what I'm saying is I'm going to create like a little bridge between this activity and the detail activity dot class. I'm going to put some information to be used in this transaction, and then I'm going to start the activity that's the target of I of this intent, mainly the detail activity dot class. I'm going to start that activity. Okay. Now, one thing that's important sometimes to check is that if you're using two activities, like the detail activity and the master activity, is that both activities are registered in what's called your Android manifest file. Okay, I'm going to get there. First, I'm going to fix this error very quickly. What is the error? Oh, close parenthesis expected. Where is that? Oh yeah, sure. Boom. Okay. So, if you do not declare your activity in the Android manifest file, you will have an exception like this one. Okay? So the idea here in the Android manifest file is to create, if you create the activity via the wizard, you don't have to worry about this. But if you create it manually, look into the Android manifest file. You see how there's an activity here, which is the master activity. Okay? Well, we'll have to create our activity in here as well. So we create an activity. The name is the actual class name of the activity, so it's going to be the detail activity there. We can put the whole path com.fragments detail activity. That's the one. Okay, we'll create the activity. We can have a label, an intent, and whatnot, but this is probably just fine. Again, we have to wait for this Gradle executing to stop, to finish working. I'll launch it on my phone. There. You'll tap on update. A new fragment comes up with the actual update. Okay, and if you type the back button, you go back to update. Tap on update, a new fragment loads on top of the old one.